Clara Whitmore pressed her hand against the cold glass of her bedroom window and watched her father help her sister into the carriage below. He smiled at Margaret. He touched her golden hair with gentle fingers. He said something that made her laugh. He never looked up, not once. 23 years Clara had lived in this house. 23 years she had walked these halls, eaten at that table, breathed the same air as her family. And still, her own father could not remember she existed. The carriage pulled away, carrying Margaret to Richmond for new dresses. Dresses for a man named Nathaniel Cole. Dresses to save their family from ruin. Clara remained at the window, invisible as always, wondering what it might feel like to be seen. If you're enjoying this story of love, heartbreak, and unexpected hope, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that subscribe button and stay with me until the very end. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? I read every single one, and it warms my heart to know how far these stories travel. Virginia, summer 1815. The afternoon heat pressed down on Whitmore House like a punishment. Clara sat in the library, her father's library, though he never used it anymore, with a book open in her lap that she wasn't reading. She was listening. 6 weeks, Mr. Patterson's voice carried through the study door. Perhaps 8 if your creditors show mercy. But I wouldn't count on mercy, Judge Whitmore, not in times like these. There must be something. Her father's voice cracked on the words. The land, surely the land. Mortgaged, every acre. You've borrowed against the future so many times, sir, that the future has nothing left to give. Clara closed her eyes. She had suspected. The missing silverware. The servants let go one by one. The way her father stared at nothing during dinner, his mind calculating debts he couldn't pay. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Margaret, her father said, and even through the wall, Clara heard the desperate hope in his voice. Margaret must marry well. Nathaniel Cole is seeking a wife. They say he's the wealthiest man in 3 counties. If Margaret could capture his attention— Cole is particular, Mr. Patterson warned. Many have tried. He's been in mourning for years, since his wife passed. Margaret will succeed. She must. Our entire future depends on it. Clara pressed her palm against the book's worn cover. Of course. Margaret. Beautiful, golden, perfect Margaret. The daughter their father actually saw. The study door opened. Clara looked down quickly, pretending to read, but it didn't matter. Judge William Whitmore walked past the library without a glance in her direction. He passed within 3 feet of where his younger daughter sat, and he did not see her. He never did. Margaret returned from Richmond 3 days later with enough dresses to fill a carriage and enough nervous energy to fill the house. Clara! She burst into the library, still wearing her traveling clothes. There you are, always buried in books. Clara set aside her volume of Jefferson's writings. Welcome home. You should see what I brought. Margaret crossed the room and took Clara's hands, pulling her up from the chair. The modiste outdid herself. There's a rose silk that's simply divine, and a cream muslin with embroidered flowers and— She stopped. Clara, you're not listening. I am. You're not. You have that look, the one where you're somewhere else entirely. Clara managed to smile. I was just thinking. About? About how Father is selling you to save us. About how I heard him planning your future like your livestock at auction. About how neither of you thought to ask what I might feel about any of it. Nothing important, Clara said. Margaret's grip on her hands tightened. Something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe, or fear. But it vanished before Clara could name it. Come help me unpack, Margaret said, her voice too bright. I want your opinion on which dress I should wear to the Cole Gala. The house buzzed with preparation for the next week. Seamstresses arrived at dawn. Maids rushed from room to room carrying ribbons and lace. And everywhere Clara turned, she heard the same name whispered like a prayer. Nathaniel Cole. Nathaniel Cole. Nathaniel Cole. She found herself in the library one evening, long after the household had gone to bed, reading by candlelight. The heat of the day had finally broken, and a soft breeze stirred the curtains. The door creaked open. Clara looked up, expecting a servant. Instead, Margaret stood in the doorway, still in her dressing gown, her golden hair loose around her shoulders. "I couldn't sleep," Margaret said. "Neither could I." Margaret crossed the room and sank into the chair beside Clara's. She drew her knees up like a child seeking comfort, and for a moment, she didn't look like the belle of Virginia. She looked young, frightened. "Clara," she said quietly, "do you ever feel like a thing instead of a person?" Clara's breath caught. In 23 years, Margaret had never asked her such a question. "Yes," Clara answered honestly. "Every single day." Margaret turned to look at her, really look at her, and Clara saw something raw in her sister's eyes, something desperate. "I had a letter," Margaret whispered, "last month, from Samuel." Samuel. Samuel Webb, the schoolteacher Margaret had loved 4 years ago, before their father forbade the match and sent him away. "He's in Ohio now," Margaret continued, her voice barely audible. "Teaching. He says he never stopped thinking about me. He says he's coming back." "Margaret, don't." Margaret's jaw tightened. "Don't tell me what I already know. That it doesn't matter. That father needs me to marry Cole. That Samuel has nothing to offer but love, and love doesn't pay debts." Clara reached for her sister's hand. "I wasn't going to say any of that." "Then what were you going to say?" Clara squeezed gently. "That I'm sorry. That I wish things were different. That you deserve to choose for yourself." Margaret's composure cracked. A single tear traced down her perfect cheek. "So do you," she whispered. "You deserve to be seen, Clara. You deserve more than hiding in libraries and being overlooked by everyone, including me." They sat in silence as the candle burned low. Two sisters who had lived in the same house for 23 years, but never truly known each other. Two women trapped by expectations they hadn't chosen. Margaret wiped her eyes and stood. "The gala is in 3 days. Father wants me to shine, to capture Nathaniel Cole's attention and save us all." "You will," Clara said. "You always do." Margaret paused at the door. "And what will you do, Clara?" "What I always do. Stay out of the way. Be invisible." "That's what Father told you, isn't it? To be invisible?" Clara didn't answer. She didn't have to. Margaret's expression hardened. "I hate him sometimes, for what he's done to you, for what he's doing to me. He's our father. That doesn't make him right." She left, closing the door softly behind her. Clara remained in her chair, staring at the dying flame of her candle, and wondered when Margaret had become someone she might actually like. The morning of the gala, Clara found her father in his study, reviewing papers with the intensity of a man searching for a miracle. "Father," she said from the doorway, "I wanted to ask about this evening. What dress should I—" "Gray." He didn't look up. "The gray muslin. You don't want to draw attention." "I thought perhaps the blue." "Gray." His voice sharpened. "This is Margaret's evening, Clara. Your only job is to stay invisible. Do you understand?" The words hit like a slap. Your only job is to stay invisible. Clara had heard variations of this her entire life. Don't speak too loudly. Don't stand too close to your sister. Don't let anyone notice you." But hearing it stated so plainly, so cruelly, on a morning already heavy with summer heat, something inside her cracked. "I understand perfectly, Father," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. "I've had 23 years of practice." She turned and walked away before he could respond, before she could say something she'd regret. Behind her, she heard him return to his papers without a word. The Cole estate emerged from the Virginia countryside like something from another world. White columns gleaming in the late afternoon sun, gardens stretching toward distant hills. Carriages lined up along the drive, each one carrying families desperate to impress the wealthiest man in 3 counties. Clara sat in their carriage beside Margaret, wearing the gray muslin that made her look like a ghost. Her sister wore rose silk that made her look like a dream. "Remember," their father said as the carriage slowed, "smile, but not too broadly. Laugh at his conversation, but not too loudly. Show interest, but not desperation. And Clara—" "I know, Father. Be invisible." Exactly. He said it without irony, without awareness of what his words cost her. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door, and Clara stepped into the warm evening air, already feeling herself disappear. The ballroom was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, music that seemed to come from everywhere. Ladies in silk and gentlemen in tailored coats, all performing for each other, all desperate to be seen by the right people. Clara drifted toward the edges, finding the shadows where she belonged. Margaret floated through the crowd like a swan on water, drawing every eye, collecting admirers like flowers. Their father steered her toward the center of the room, toward the man everyone was watching, Nathaniel Cole. Clara saw him from across the ballroom, tall, dark-haired, broad shoulders that spoke of work rather than leisure. He stood surrounded by people trying to impress him, but something in his posture suggested he was already bored. He looked up suddenly. His eyes swept across the room, and stopped. Clara froze. He was looking at her. Not through her, not past her. At her. Then Margaret arrived at his side, golden and glowing, and his attention shifted. Of course it did. That was how things worked. That was how things always worked. Clara exhaled slowly and slipped further into the shadows. She found the library almost by accident. A door half hidden behind a silk curtain. A room full of books when everywhere else was full of people. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her, breathing in the scent of leather and paper and blessed solitude. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Not decorative books chosen for their spines. Real books. Philosophy, politics, history, poetry. Her fingers found a slim volume bound in dark blue leather. She pulled it from the shelf before she registered the title. A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Mary Wollstonecraft. Clara opened it carefully, her heart quickening. She had read this book twice, in secret, borrowing it from a friend who understood. To find it here, in a ballroom library, seemed impossible. "Wollstonecraft," said a voice behind her. "Bold choice for a party." Clara spun around, the book nearly falling from her hands. Nathaniel Cole stood in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Mr. Cole." She felt heat flood her cheeks. "I apologize. I shouldn't have—" "Why not?" He stepped into the room, leaving the door slightly open. "They're here to be read." "I should return to the party." "Should you?" He tilted his head, studying her. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." "So did I." Clara didn't know what to say. No one had ever noticed what she looked like. No one had ever cared enough to observe. "Have you read it?" he asked, nodding toward the book in her hands. Yes. What did you think? The question was genuine. His attention was focused entirely on her, as though she were actually worth listening to. Clara felt something shift inside her, something long buried beginning to stir. I think, she said slowly, that she argues persuasively. Denying women education doesn't protect their virtue. It ensures their dependence. Treating women as decorative objects diminishes everyone. Nathaniel's expression changed. Something lit in his eyes that hadn't been there during his conversation with Margaret. Most women I've met, he said, believe discussing philosophy is improper. Most women you've met, Clara replied, were probably taught that thinking is improper. Silence stretched between them. Then Nathaniel Cole smiled. Not the polite expression he'd worn all evening, but something real. Something that softened the grief-carved lines of his face. You're the Whitmore sister, he said. The younger one. Yes, Margaret is the one you're supposed to notice. I noticed you first. Clara's heart stopped, started again. Mr. Cole, you were standing by the window when you arrived. You looked at this house like you were seeing something no one else could see. You walked into this ballroom like you expected to disappear. He paused. I wanted to know why. Because I always disappear. The words came out before she could stop them. It's what I do. It's what I'm supposed to do. Says who? Everyone? Nathaniel moved closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar on his chin, the slight imperfection in his otherwise ordered appearance. Everyone is wrong, he said quietly. The library door burst open. There you are! Judge Whitmore's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Margaret stood behind him, her perfect composure showing the first cracks of uncertainty. Father, Clara began. Your Grace. Her father moved between them, his smile strained. I apologize. My younger daughter has a habit of wandering. I hope she hasn't troubled you. Not at all, Nathaniel said, his tone suddenly distant. The warmth that had animated his face disappeared behind a polite mask. Miss Clara and I were discussing literature, a refreshing conversation. He turned back to Clara, and for a moment their eyes met. I hope we might continue our discussion another time, Miss Whitmore, he said softly. Then he bowed, acknowledged Margaret and their father, and walked away. Clara stood frozen, still holding Wollstonecraft's book, her heart pounding against her ribs. What did you say to him? Her father's voice was low and furious. You were supposed to stay invisible. I did nothing. He approached me. See that it doesn't happen again. Margaret is the one he should be noticing, not you. He took Margaret's arm and steered her away, already planning his next approach, already calculating his next move. Clara remained by the bookshelf, carefully returning the blue volume to its place. Her hands were trembling. I noticed you first. 3 words. 3 impossible words. Across the ballroom, she caught sight of Nathaniel speaking with an elderly couple, performing his duties as host, being everything society expected him to be. But once, just once, his gaze swept back across the room and found her. Their eyes held for a heartbeat, 2 heartbeats, 3. Then he looked away. Clara pressed her palm against the bookshelf to steady herself. For 23 years, she had been invisible. For 23 years, she had accepted that invisibility was her fate. But tonight, someone had seen her, really seen her. And Clara Whitmore had absolutely no idea what to do with that. The carriage ride home felt like a funeral procession. Clara sat pressed against the window, her gray dress blending with the shadows, while her father's voice filled the confined space with barely contained fury. He danced with you once, Margaret. Once. The entire evening, and he spent more time talking to your sister about books than courting you properly. Father, please, Margaret began. Do you understand what's at stake? 6 weeks. We have 6 weeks before we lose everything. The house, the land, our name. And you let him slip away to discuss philosophy with Clara. Clara's hands clenched in her lap. I didn't ask him to speak with me. Then you should have had the sense to bore him. Her father finally turned to look at her, and the disappointment in his eyes cut deeper than his words. One task, Clara. I gave you one task. Be invisible. And you couldn't even manage that. William, Margaret's voice sharpened. That's enough. Don't defend her. She's always been... What? Clara heard herself ask. I've always been what, Father? The question hung in the air like smoke. Judge Whitmore looked at his younger daughter, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. And then he turned away. Disappointing, he said quietly. You've always been disappointing. Clara didn't cry. She had learned long ago that tears were wasted on people who couldn't see you. But something inside her, something that had been holding on by threads, finally snapped. The days after the gala passed in a blur of tension and silence. Clara avoided her father. Her father avoided acknowledging her existence. And Margaret moved through the house like a ghost in beautiful clothing, performing her role while something behind her eyes slowly died. 3 days after the gala, a messenger arrived. Clara was in the library when she heard her father's voice rise from the front hall. Not angry this time, excited, desperate with hope. He's calling? Today? Here? Yes, sir. Mr. Cole sends his compliments and asks if the Whitmore family might receive him this afternoon. Clara's heart stopped. She heard her father's footsteps racing through the house, heard him calling for Margaret, heard the household burst into sudden frantic activity. No one called for her. She remained in her chair, Jefferson's writings open in her lap, and tried to convince herself that the fluttering in her chest meant nothing. Nathaniel Cole was coming to court Margaret. That was the plan. That was how things were supposed to work. What had happened at the gala, the conversation, the connection, the way he had looked at her, was an aberration. A moment of curiosity that would fade the instant he saw Margaret again in proper lighting. Clara had spent 23 years learning not to hope. She wasn't about to start now. Nathaniel Cole arrived at precisely 2 o'clock. Clara heard the front door open, heard her father's too eager greeting, heard Margaret's practiced laugh, musical and perfect. She did not go to the parlor. Instead, she pressed deeper into the library's shadows and opened her book to a random page. The words swam before her eyes. Footsteps approached. The library door creaked open. Miss Clara. Nathaniel's voice was quiet, certain, like he had known exactly where to find her. I was hoping you might join us. Clara looked up slowly. He stood in the doorway, sunlight from the hall catching the angles of his face, and something in his expression made her breath catch. He hadn't come for Margaret. He had come for her. Mr. Cole, she managed, I thought... Your father thought I came to court your sister. He stepped into the room. I let him believe it. But I came to continue our conversation, if you're willing. Clara's mind raced. That would be improper. Probably. He smiled slightly. Will you come anyway? She should say no. She should stay invisible, as her father commanded. She should let Margaret shine and save their family, and accept her place in the shadows. But Nathaniel Cole was looking at her like she mattered, and Clara Whitmore was so very tired of not mattering. Yes, she said. I'll come. The parlor fell silent when Clara entered on Nathaniel's arm. Her father's face went through a fascinating progression of emotions: confusion, alarm, and then a desperate attempt to redirect the situation. Ah, Mr. Cole, Judge Whitmore said, his smile straining at the edges. I see you've collected Clara from her books. She does so love to hide away. But Margaret was just telling me about her time in Richmond. Perhaps she could share. I'd like to hear about Miss Clara's reading, Nathaniel interrupted gently. She mentioned Jefferson at the gala. I'm curious about her thoughts on his educational philosophy. Margaret sat frozen on the settee, her hands folded perfectly in her lap. But her eyes found Clara's, and in them Clara saw not anger, but relief. Thank God, that look seemed to say. Thank God it's not me he wants. Jefferson, Clara said carefully, acutely aware of her father's burning gaze, believed that education should be available to all, not just the wealthy, not just men. A radical position, a necessary one. An uneducated populace cannot govern itself, and a nation that educates only half its citizens wastes half its potential. Nathaniel leaned forward slightly. You include women in that calculation. I include everyone. Your father must be proud of such a well-read daughter. The silence that followed was devastating. Judge Whitmore opened his mouth, closed it, could not seem to find words that weren't lies. Clara felt the old familiar ache settle in her chest. But she kept her chin high, kept her voice steady. My father has many things to be proud of, she said. I have simply never been one of them. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Nathaniel's expression shifted. Something fierce moved behind his eyes. Anger, Clara realized. Not at her. For her. Then your father, he said quietly, is a fool. Judge Whitmore's face turned red. Now see here, Mr. Cole. Margaret stood suddenly, her voice carrying an edge Clara had never heard before. Perhaps you might enjoy a walk in the garden. The afternoon is pleasant. Clara could accompany you. I'll ensure you're properly chaperoned. She was offering Clara an escape, a chance to be alone, or nearly alone, with the man their father desperately wanted for Margaret. It was the most generous thing her sister had ever done. I would enjoy that very much, Nathaniel said. Clara took his offered arm and let him lead her away from her father's furious gaze. The garden path wound between overgrown rose bushes and neglected flower beds. Signs of the family's financial decline were everywhere, but Nathaniel didn't seem to notice. His attention was fixed entirely on Clara. What do you dream about? He asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. I beg your pardon? Dreams, hopes. What do you want for yourself, Miss Clara? Not what your father wants, not what society expects. What do you want? No one had ever asked her that before. Clara walked in silence for a long moment, trying to find words for feelings she had never been allowed to express. I want to matter, she said finally. I want to walk into a room and have someone, anyone, notice that I'm there. I want conversations that mean something. I want to be seen. Her voice broke slightly. I want to stop being invisible. Nathaniel stopped walking. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. You are not invisible, he said. You have never been invisible. You have simply been surrounded by blind men. Mr. Cole, my wife saw the world the way you do. His voice roughened. Eliza. She died 6 years ago. Fever took her in 3 days. 3 days, and then she was gone. And I have spent every day since trying to remember what it felt like to be truly alive. Clara's heart clenched. I'm sorry. Don't be. I didn't tell you to earn sympathy. I told you because... He paused, struggling for words. Because when I saw you at that gala, reading Wollstonecraft like the party didn't exist, I felt something I haven't felt in 6 years. Curiosity. Interest. the sense that there was someone worth knowing. "You don't know me." "No, but I want to, if you'll let me." Behind them, at a proper distance, Margaret stood with their elderly aunt, hastily recruited as chaperone, pretending not to watch. Clara should refuse, should protect herself, should retreat to the safety of invisibility. But Nathaniel Cole was offering her something she had never been offered before, a chance to be seen. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll let you." The visits continued. Nathaniel called every third day, precisely as propriety dictated. He brought appropriate gifts, flowers, books, a collection of botanical prints. He was unfailingly courteous to Margaret, respectful to Judge Whitmore, perfect in every social obligation. But his conversations were always with Clara. They debated Jefferson's notes on Virginia in the parlor, while Margaret embroidered and their father fumed. They discussed Wollstonecraft in the garden, while Aunt Prudence dozed on a bench. They argued about Hamilton's economic policies until Clara forgot to be nervous and started actually enjoying herself. "You're wrong about the National Bank," she told him one afternoon, 2 weeks into his courtship. "Hamilton's system concentrates too much power in too few hands. And Jefferson's agrarian dream concentrates too little power anywhere." Nathaniel's eyes sparked with the pleasure of genuine debate. A nation of farmers cannot compete with a nation of industry. A nation of industry forgets its soul. A nation without industry has no economy to sustain its soul. Clara found herself smiling. "You argue well for someone who's wrong." "I argue well because I'm right." But he was smiling too. "Though I admit, you make me work harder than I've worked in years." Is that a complaint? It's the opposite. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. Clara looked away first, heat flooding her cheeks. "My father thinks you're wasting your time with me." "Your father thinks many things." Nathaniel's voice hardened slightly. "Most of them wrong." "He wants you to marry Margaret." "I know what he wants." "And what do you want?" Nathaniel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, intense. "I want to stop feeling dead inside. I want conversations that challenge me. I want someone who sees me as a person, not a fortune to be captured." He paused. "I want you, Clara, if you'll have me." Clara's heart stopped. "You can't mean that." "I can. I do." "I'm not beautiful. I'm not charming. I'll embarrass you at parties. People will say you've made a terrible mistake." "Let them say it." "Mr. Cole." "Nathaniel." His hand found hers, the touch sending electricity through her entire body. "My name is Nathaniel, and I want to hear you say it." Clara looked up into his eyes, dark, steady, certain, and felt the wall she had built around her heart begin to crack. "Nathaniel," she whispered. He smiled, and in that smile, Clara saw something she had never seen directed at her before. Hope. That evening, after Nathaniel had gone, Margaret came to Clara's room. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, her perfect composure finally cracking. "Samuel is coming back," she said. Clara sat up straighter. "What?" "I received another letter today. He's left Ohio. He's traveling east. He'll be in Virginia within the month." "Margaret!" "I know." Tears streamed down Margaret's cheeks. "I know it's impossible. Father will never allow it. Samuel has nothing, no money, no prospects, no future that Father would accept. But Clara," her voice broke, "he still loves me. After 4 years, he still loves me." Clara crossed the room and pulled her sister into her arms. "What will you do?" she asked. "I don't know." Margaret's shoulders shook with silent sobs. I don't know what to do. I've spent 4 years being the perfect daughter, the beautiful daughter, the daughter who would save us all. And now Nathaniel wants you. Thank God he wants you. But Father still expects me to find a wealthy husband, still expects me to sell myself to the highest bidder. You're not for sale, aren't I? Margaret pulled back, her face streaked with tears. Aren't we both? The question cut deeper than Clara wanted to admit. Nathaniel said something today, Clara said slowly. He said he wants me, if I'll have him. Margaret's eyes widened. He proposed? Not formally, but yes, I think he means to. Clara! Margaret gripped her hands. This is wonderful. This is everything Father wanted. He wanted it for you. He wanted it for the family, and now he'll get it through you. Margaret's voice took on an edge. Unless you're planning to refuse. Clara thought of Nathaniel's eyes, his smile, the way he looked at her like she was worth seeing. No, she said, I'm not planning to refuse. Then we'll both get what we want. Margaret's tears had dried, replaced by something harder, more determined. You'll marry Nathaniel and save the family. And when Father no longer needs my beauty to catch a wealthy husband, I'll be free to choose Samuel. Father will never accept that. Father will accept whatever keeps him from ruin. Margaret's smile was bitter. He's practical, our Father. He'll sacrifice any principle, any daughter, any dream, if it means keeping his precious house and his precious name. Let me worry about Father. You focus on Nathaniel. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to warn her sister that their father wasn't nearly as practical as she believed. But Margaret was already leaving, already closing the door, already planning a future that depended entirely on Clara doing something she had never done before. Being seen, being chosen, being enough. 3 days later, Judge Whitmore called Clara into his study. She went with her heart pounding, expecting anger. He had barely spoken to her since the garden walk, had watched Nathaniel's continued attention with mounting fury. Instead, she found her father sitting behind his desk, looking older than she had ever seen him. Mr. Cole has asked permission to court you formally, he said without preamble. Clara's breath caught. Father? I told him yes. The words didn't make sense. You... what? I told him yes. Judge Whitmore's voice was flat, defeated. I told him he had my blessing to pursue my younger daughter. The invisible one. The disappointing one. The one I never thought anyone would want. Father! Don't. He held up a hand. Don't thank me. Don't pretend this is anything other than what it is. A desperate man making a desperate choice. If Cole wants you instead of Margaret, then you're what he gets. I can't afford to refuse. Clara felt the words hit her like blows. Even now, even when she was finally being chosen, her father couldn't bring himself to be proud. Is that all? She asked, her voice steady despite the pain. One more thing. Judge Whitmore finally looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something unexpected. Not pride, not love, but something close to guilt. Your mother was like you know, before she died. Quiet, bookish, invisible to everyone except me. Clara's throat tightened. I didn't know that. I loved her for it, for who she was, not who she appeared to be. He paused. I've spent 15 years trying to forget that love, trying to forget her. And then you grew up looking just like her, sounding just like her, and I... His voice broke. Clara stood frozen, watching her father crack open for the first time in her memory. I couldn't look at you, he said. Every time I saw your face, I saw her, and it hurt too much. So I stopped looking, stopped seeing, told myself you were nothing like her, that you were disappointing, that you were invisible, because it was easier than grieving. Tears burned Clara's eyes. Father, I'm not asking forgiveness. He turned away. I'm just explaining. You wanted to know why I've always treated you the way I have. Now you know. Clara wanted to rage, wanted to scream that his grief didn't excuse 23 years of neglect, wanted to demand the childhood he had stolen from her. Instead, she said, I forgive you anyway. Her father's shoulders shook once, just once. Go, he said roughly. Your Mr. Cole is expecting an answer. Give him one. Clara left her father's study with tears streaming down her face. But for the first time in her life, they weren't tears of invisible pain. They were tears of something that felt almost like healing. When Nathaniel arrived the next morning, Clara met him in the garden alone. He took one look at her face and crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. What's wrong? Nothing. She managed a watery smile. Everything. My father told me about my mother, about why he couldn't see me, about Clara. Nathaniel's hand cupped her face, gentle as prayer. You're crying. I'm processing. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. She took a shaky breath. My father said yes, to your courtship. He gave his blessing. Nathaniel went still. And what do you say? Clara looked up into his eyes, dark, steady, waiting for her answer like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. Yes, she said. I say yes. Nathaniel smiled. And then, propriety be damned, he pulled her into his arms and held her like she was something precious, something worth keeping, something seen. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Clara's life, and the most terrifying. Nathaniel called every other day now, his courtship no longer hidden behind polite pretense. He brought her books she had mentioned wanting to read. He brought her wildflowers from his estate, imperfect and beautiful, not the hothouse roses other suitors gave to other women. He brought her conversations that made her feel alive. You're wrong about Adams, Clara told him one afternoon, 3 weeks into their official courtship. His alien and sedition acts were tyranny dressed in patriotism. They were necessary protection during a crisis. They were censorship. They were fear made law. Jefferson was right to oppose them. Nathaniel laughed, that real laugh she had learned to treasure. You're a Jeffersonian through and through. And you're a Federalist who hasn't admitted it yet. Perhaps. His eyes softened. Or perhaps I simply enjoy watching you argue. Your whole face changes when you're passionate about something. Your eyes light up. You forget to be invisible. Clara's cheeks flushed. I'm learning. You're magnificent. She looked away, unable to hold his gaze. 3 weeks of being seen, and she still couldn't quite believe it was real. Nathaniel, she said quietly, there's something I need to tell you. About your family's finances? Clara's head snapped up. You know? I've known since before the gala. He reached for her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I make it my business to know the circumstances of anyone I might involve myself with. Your father owes substantial debts. Your estate is mortgaged beyond recovery. Without intervention, you'll lose everything within months. Then why? Clara's voice cracked. Why pursue me? Why not walk away? Because money has nothing to do with the worth of a person's soul. Nathaniel's grip tightened. I didn't come to that gala seeking a transaction, Clara. I came seeking something real. I found you. But if you knew, I wanted your choice to be free, truly free. I wanted you to choose me because you wanted me, not because you needed rescue. Tears burned Clara's eyes. How can my choice be free when my family is drowning? Because I've already handled it. The world stopped spinning. What? I settled your father's debts last week. Nathaniel's voice was quiet, steady. Anonymously. He doesn't know it was me. As far as he knows, a distant relative came through with unexpected funds. Clara couldn't breathe. Why would you do that? Because I wanted there to be no debts between us, no obligations, no pressure. He lifted her hand to his lips. I want you to marry me because you love me, Clara. Not because I saved your family. Not because you had no other choice. Because you want to spend your life arguing with me about politics and philosophy and everything else. Nathaniel, you don't have to answer now. You don't have to answer ever if you don't want to. The debts are settled regardless. Your family is safe regardless. But I needed you to know the truth. Clara stared at him. This man who had seen her when she was invisible, who had chosen her when the world said she was nothing, who had freed her from obligation so she could choose freely. I love you, she said. The words came out before she could stop them, before she could second-guess them, before fear could swallow them whole. Nathaniel went very still. Clara, I love you. I don't know when it happened. Maybe in the library at your gala. Maybe the first time you made me laugh. Maybe just now, when you gave me the one thing no one has ever given me before. What's that? Freedom. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You gave me freedom, and I love you for it. Nathaniel pulled her into his arms, propriety be damned, and held her so tightly she could feel his heart pounding against her chest. I love you too, he murmured against her hair. God help me. I love you too. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the weight of the world finally lifting from Clara's shoulders. Then a voice cut through the moment like shattered glass. Well, isn't this touching? Clara jerked back. A woman stood at the garden gate, watching them with cold amusement. She was perhaps 60, dressed in silk that cost more than the Whitmore's annual income. Her face arranged in an expression of polite contempt. Mrs. Eleanor Crawford, the most powerful woman in Virginia society. Mrs. Crawford, Nathaniel's voice hardened. I wasn't aware we were expecting visitors. You weren't, Mrs. Crawford swept through the gate like she owned it. I came to see for myself the rumors I've been hearing. Nathaniel Cole, courting the plain Whitmore sister, ignoring the beautiful one. Society is positively buzzing. Society should mind its own affairs. Society's affairs are my affairs, dear boy. They always have been. Her eyes fixed on Clara, sharp and assessing. You're the one, then. The invisible daughter who somehow captured the most eligible bachelor in 3 counties. Clara straightened her spine. I'm Clara Whitmore, ma'am. I know who you are. The question is whether you know who you're dealing with. Mrs. Crawford circled her like a predator examining prey. Nathaniel Cole is one of the wealthiest men in Virginia. He could have anyone. Queens have tried to capture his attention. Heiresses have thrown themselves at his feet. And he chooses you? Yes, Clara said steadily. He does. Interesting. Mrs. Crawford's smile didn't reach her eyes. Tell me, Miss Whitmore, what exactly do you bring to this match? Your family is penniless. Your face is ordinary. Your accomplishments are, what? Reading books? Having opinions? Eleanor. Nathaniel's voice cut like ice. That's enough. Is it? Someone needs to say what everyone is thinking. Mrs. Crawford turned back to Clara. You're out of your depth, child. The world Nathaniel inhabits, my world, will eat you alive. You'll be mocked at every party, whispered about at every gathering. They'll say he married beneath him. They'll say grief clouded his judgment. They'll say you trapped him somehow. Clara's hands trembled. but she kept her voice even. "Let them say it." "You think you're brave," Mrs. Crawford laughed softly. "You have no idea what brave means. Brave is surviving the scrutiny of every eye in Richmond. Brave is smiling when they call you plain to your face. Brave is standing beside a man who could have had anyone and pretending you deserve to be there." "I don't pretend anything." Clara stepped forward, surprising herself. "I know exactly what I am, Mrs. Crawford. I'm not beautiful. I'm not charming. I've spent my entire life being overlooked and dismissed and told I was worthless. But I am not out of my depth, and I am not afraid of you." Silence. Mrs. Crawford's eyes widened fractionally. Whatever she had expected, it wasn't defiance. "Well," she said slowly, "perhaps there's more to you than I thought." "There's more to everyone than you think," Clara replied. "That's the problem with people like you. You see surfaces. You see what society tells you to see. You never bother looking deeper." "And you think Nathaniel is different?" "I know he is. He saw me when I was invisible. He valued me when I had nothing. He settled your father's debts." The words dropped like stones. Clara's blood went cold. "How do you know that?" "I know everything, Miss Whitmore. It's my business to know." Mrs. Crawford's smile sharpened. "So tell me, now that you know your family is saved, now that there's no pressure, no obligation, do you still love him? Or were you simply grateful?" The question hit Clara like a physical blow. She looked at Nathaniel, standing rigid beside her, his face carefully blank. But she knew him now. She could see the fear beneath his composure. The fear that she would doubt, that she would wonder, that Mrs. Crawford's poison would work. "I loved him before I knew about the debts," Clara said quietly. "I love him now. I'll love him tomorrow and next year, and in 50 years when we're old and gray and still arguing about politics. Not because he saved my family. Because he saw me. Because he chose me. Because he makes me feel like I matter." She turned to Nathaniel. "And if you ever doubt that, Nathaniel Cole, I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you." Something broke open in Nathaniel's expression. Something raw and vulnerable and beautiful. "I believe you," he said. Mrs. Crawford watched them both for a long moment. Something shifted in her face. Not approval exactly, but something close to respect. "You might survive after all," she said finally. "Society will still judge you. They'll still whisper. But I've seen weaker women crumble under less pressure. You," she paused, "you might actually be strong enough." "Was that a test?" Nathaniel's voice was hard. "Everything is a test, dear boy. You should know that by now." Mrs. Crawford gathered her skirts. "I'll expect you both at my gathering next week. Consider it your formal introduction to society as a couple. If you survive that, you might survive anything." She left without waiting for a response. Clara's knees gave out the moment the gate closed. Nathaniel caught her, holding her upright, his arms strong around her. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I'm so sorry. I should have warned you about Eleanor. I should have—" "Don't." Clara pressed her face against his chest. "Don't apologize. I'm glad she came. I'm glad she tested me. Now I know." "Know what?" Clara looked up at him, tears tracking down her cheeks, but her voice steady. "That I'm stronger than I thought I was. That I can face them. That I can face anything as long as you're beside me." Nathaniel kissed her forehead, soft as a promise. "Always," he said. "I'll be beside you. Always." That night, Margaret came to Clara's room. She was pale, her composure cracking, her hands shaking as she closed the door behind her. "Samuel arrived this afternoon," she whispered. Clara sat up sharply. "What?" "He's here, in Virginia. He came to the house while you were with Nathaniel. Father doesn't know. I have Aunt Prudence distract him while Samuel and I spoke in the garden." "Margaret, that's dangerous." "I don't care." Margaret's voice broke. "I don't care anymore, Clara. I've spent 4 years being the perfect daughter, the beautiful daughter, the one who does everything right. And what has it gotten me? A parade of suitors who see my face and not my soul. A father who sees me as currency. A life that feels like a slow death. What are you going to do?" Margaret sat on the edge of Clara's bed, her shoulders shaking. "Samuel asked me to marry him. He has a position now, a good one, at a school in Ohio. It's not wealth, Clara. It's not what Father wants. But it's love. Real love. The kind you have with Nathaniel. Does Father know?" "Not yet." Margaret's jaw tightened. "But he will. Tomorrow. Samuel is coming to speak with him tomorrow." Clara's heart clenched. "Father will refuse." "I know. That's why I need your help." "Margaret, you've changed things, Clara. You've shown Father that his plans don't always work out the way he expects. You've shown him that the invisible daughter can capture a wealthy man's heart. Now I need you to help me show him that the beautiful daughter deserves to choose love too." Clara reached for her sister's hands. "What do you need me to do?" "Stand with me. Tomorrow, when Samuel comes, stand with me and help me make Father understand. He'll be furious. He's always furious. But now he needs us. Now he depends on us. We have leverage we've never had before." Clara thought of the years she had spent invisible. The years Margaret had spent on display. 2 sisters trapped by expectations they hadn't chosen, finally finding a way to fight back. "Yes," Clara said. "I'll stand with you." Margaret's face crumpled. She pulled Clara into a fierce embrace, holding her like a lifeline. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "We're sisters," Clara said. "We should have been standing together all along." The next morning, everything shattered. Samuel Webb arrived at precisely 10 o'clock, dressed in his best coat, his face pale but determined. Clara watched from the parlor window as he walked up the drive. A schoolteacher, with nothing to offer but love, coming to ask for the hand of the most beautiful woman in Virginia. Margaret met him at the door. Their father emerged from his study moments later, already suspicious, already sensing that something was wrong. "Who is this?" Judge Whitmore demanded. "Margaret, who is this man?" "Father?" Margaret's voice trembled but held steady. "This is Samuel Webb. I believe you remember him." The color drained from their father's face. "Webb, the schoolteacher I sent away 4 years ago." "The man I love." Margaret stepped closer to Samuel, their hands intertwining. "The man I'm going to marry." "Absolutely not!" Judge Whitmore's voice rose to a shout. "I forbade this. I forbade this 4 years ago, and I forbid it now. You will not throw yourself away on some penniless—" "I'm not throwing myself away." Margaret's composure cracked. "I'm choosing. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what I want." "What you want? What about what this family needs? What about what this family needs?" Clara said, stepping into the room, "is to stop treating its daughters like property." Her father whirled on her. "Stay out of this, Clara. This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me. Margaret is my sister. Her happiness concerns me." Clara moved to stand beside Margaret and Samuel. "And you should know better than anyone that love doesn't follow the rules we set for it." "Don't you dare! You loved Mother." Clara's voice cut through his anger. "You told me so yourself." You loved her because she was quiet and bookish and invisible, not despite it. You loved her for who she was, not for what she could give you. How can you deny Margaret the same chance?" Judge Whitmore's face went white. "That's different," he said roughly. "How? How is it different? Because Margaret is beautiful? Because you've spent her whole life treating her beauty like an asset to be deployed? She's not a possession, Father. She's not a bargaining chip. She's your daughter." "Mr. Whitmore," Samuel spoke for the first time, his voice steady despite his obvious fear. "I know I'm not what you wanted for Margaret. I have no fortune, no family name, nothing to offer but my heart and my future and my absolute devotion to your daughter's happiness." "That's not enough." "It's enough for me." Margaret's voice strengthened. "Father, I have been the perfect daughter for 26 years. I have smiled when I wanted to scream. I have charmed men I despised. I have performed every role you set for me, and I'm done. Margaret, I'm done being your investment. I'm done being a beautiful object for wealthy men to acquire. I'm going to marry Samuel, with or without your blessing." The silence that followed was deafening. Clara watched her father's face cycle through fury, betrayal, and something that looked almost like grief. "You would both defy me?" he asked finally. "Both my daughters?" "We would both choose love," Clara said quietly, "the way you once chose it." Judge Whitmore stood frozen for a long moment. Then, slowly, something in him seemed to crumble. "Your mother would be proud of you," he said roughly. "Both of you. She always said I was too focused on security, too afraid of losing everything to see what I already had." "Father," Margaret started. "I don't approve." He held up a hand. "I don't approve, and I don't understand, and I think you're both fools for choosing love over sense. But," his voice cracked, "but I am tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of trying to control daughters who refuse to be controlled." He looked at Samuel. "If you hurt her, I will destroy you." "I won't hurt her, sir." "See that you don't." Judge Whitmore turned and walked toward his study. At the door, he paused. "Clara, Nathaniel Cole is a good man. Better than I deserved for either of my daughters. Don't let him go." "I won't, Father." He nodded once and disappeared into his study. Margaret let out a sob of relief and threw herself into Samuel's arms. Clara watched them, two people who had waited 4 years for this moment, finally free to love each other openly, and felt tears prick her own eyes. Then Margaret pulled away from Samuel and reached for Clara, pulling her into the embrace. "Thank you," Margaret whispered. "Thank you for standing with me." "Always," Clara said. "We're sisters. From now on, we stand together." That afternoon, Nathaniel found Clara in the garden. She was sitting on the stone bench beneath the old oak tree, her face turned toward the sky, tears still drying on her cheeks. "I heard," he said, sitting beside her. "Samuel Webb, your sister's lost love returned at last." "Father didn't fight as hard as I expected." Clara managed a watery smile. "I think we finally broke something in him. Something that needed breaking." "And you?" Nathaniel took her hand. "How are you?" "Overwhelmed, happy, terrified." She laughed softly. "The usual." "Clara." He shifted to face her fully. "I was going to wait. I was going to do this properly, at Mrs. Crawford's gathering, in front of everyone. But after today, after watching your family fight for love, I can't wait anymore." Clara's heart stopped. "Nathaniel." He dropped to one knee. "Clara Whitmore," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I have spent 6 years learning to live without love. 6 years convincing myself that feeling nothing was better than risking pain again. And then I met you. Nathaniel. You challenged me. You argued with me. You made me think and feel and want again. You brought me back from the dead, Clara. And I never want to go back. He reached into his pocket and produced a ring. Simple, elegant. A sapphire the color of her eyes, set in delicate gold. Marry me, he said. Not because of obligation, or expectation, or family duty. Marry me because you love me. Because I love you. Because I want to spend the rest of my life watching your eyes light up when you argue, and holding you when you're afraid, and proving to you every single day that you were never invisible. You were just waiting to be seen. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but look at this man who had found her in the shadows and pulled her into the light. Yes, she whispered. Nathaniel's face transformed. Relief, joy, love, pure and overwhelming. Yes, he repeated. Yes. Clara laughed through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I love you. Yes, yes, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as though it had been waiting for her all along. And then he kissed her. The first real kiss of Clara's life. His lips were warm and gentle and certain, and Clara felt something shift inside her. Something that had been locked away for 23 years, finally breaking free. When they pulled apart, Nathaniel pressed his forehead against hers. I love you, he murmured. I love you, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt it. I love you too, Clara whispered back. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve it. You already do. He kissed her again, soft as a promise. You always did. From the house, Clara heard Margaret's delighted cry as she spotted them through the window. Heard her sister calling for their father, announcing the news. Tomorrow, society would judge them. Tomorrow, Mrs. Crawford's gathering would test them. Tomorrow, the whispers would begin. But today, Clara Whitmore was loved, truly loved, seen and chosen and valued for exactly who she was. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. The morning of Mrs. Crawford's gathering arrived like a verdict waiting to be delivered. Clara stood before her mirror, wearing the sapphire silk dress Nathaniel had sent the day before. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He had asked Margaret for her measurements, had hired the finest modiste in Richmond, had thought of everything. But the woman staring back at her still looked like Clara Whitmore, still ordinary, still unremarkable, still the invisible daughter who had somehow captured Virginia's most eligible bachelor. Stop, Margaret said from the doorway. I can hear you doubting yourself from across the hall. I'm not doubting. You're terrified. Margaret crossed the room and took Clara's hands. And that's allowed. But you cannot let them see it. The moment they smell fear, they'll devour you. How do you do it? Clara asked. All those years of being watched, being judged. How did you survive it? I didn't. Margaret's voice dropped. I survived by dying inside, a little more each day. That's not survival, Clara. That's surrender. She squeezed tighter. You're stronger than I ever was. You just don't know it yet. Margaret, Nathaniel loves you. I love you. Father, in his broken way, loves you. And today, you're going to walk into Mrs. Crawford's gathering and show all of Virginia that Clara Whitmore is done being invisible. Clara's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. What if I fail? Then you fail magnificently. And we try again tomorrow. Margaret smiled, but her eyes were fierce. That's what love does, Clara. It gives us the courage to fail, and the strength to get back up. The carriage ride to Mrs. Crawford's estate felt endless and too short all at once. Nathaniel sat across from Clara, his presence solid and reassuring. Margaret sat beside her, Samuel having been pointedly not invited. Their father had stayed home, claiming headache, though Clara suspected cowardice. "Remember," Nathaniel said as the carriage slowed, "you don't owe them anything. Not explanations, not apologies, not proof that you deserve to be here. You are here because I chose you, because you chose me. That's all that matters. They won't see it that way. Then they're blind." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Clara, I spent 6 years watching people perform for society's approval, watching them twist themselves into shapes that weren't their own, watching them sacrifice everything genuine for the sake of whispered approval. And I'm done with it. I chose you because you're real, because you've never once pretended to be something you're not. Let them whisper. Let them judge. You are worth more than their approval." The carriage stopped. Clara took a breath, then another. "Ready?" Nathaniel asked. "No," Clara said honestly, "but I'm going anyway." He smiled, that real smile she had learned to treasure. "That's my girl." The gathering was everything Clara had feared. Women in silk and jewels, watching her with barely concealed curiosity. Men in tailored coats, assessing her like a... Everyone is simply dying to know how you managed to capture dear Nathaniel's attention, when there were so many more, she paused delicately, obvious choices available. Clara felt Nathaniel stiffen beside her, felt him preparing to intervene. She spoke first. "Perhaps Mr. Cole was tired of obvious choices," Clara said calmly. "Perhaps he wanted something more interesting than beauty. Perhaps he wanted a mind he could respect, a heart he could trust, a partner he could build a life with." Lady Ashby's smile faltered. "I only meant—" "I know exactly what you meant, Lady Ashby, and I'm sure everyone here shares your curiosity." Clara raised her voice slightly, ensuring she could be heard by the eavesdroppers clustered nearby. "The answer is simple. I didn't capture him. I didn't trap him. I didn't use any art or wile or manipulation. I was simply myself. And apparently, that was enough." Silence rippled through the nearby guests. Lady Ashby's face flushed red. "Well, how refreshing." "Isn't it?" Clara smiled sweetly. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I believe Mrs. Crawford..." "Are you also aware that many of them hope to see you fail tonight? That they're watching every step you take, waiting for you to prove them right about you?" Clara's heart hammered, but her voice stayed steady. "I am aware of that too." "And yet you came anyway." "I came because the alternative was hiding, and I've spent enough of my life hiding." Something flickered in Mrs. Crawford's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. "Interesting." She turned to address the gathered crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you all remember Mr. Nathaniel Cole, and this is his intended, Miss Clara Whitmore. Do try to make her feel welcome." It was a command wrapped in courtesy. The guests responded accordingly, approaching one by one to offer congratulations that ranged from genuine to poisonous. Clara fielded them all. She answered questions about her reading with quiet authority. She deflected comments about her appearance with gentle humor. She stood firm when a particularly bold woman suggested Nathaniel could still change his mind. "He could," Clara agreed, "but he won't. And do you know why?" "Do enlighten me." "Because Nathaniel Cole is not a fool, and only a fool would choose a pretty face over a loyal heart." She smiled. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe I see someone more pleasant to talk to." An hour passed. Then 2. Clara's face ached from smiling. Her feet ached from standing. Her heart ached from the constant low-level cruelty disguised as curiosity. But she was surviving. More than surviving. She was winning. Then the disaster arrived. "Well, well." A voice Clara didn't recognize cut through the crowd. "If it isn't the invisible Whitmore sister, finally stepping into the light." Clara turned. A woman approached, perhaps 30, stunningly beautiful, with dark hair and green eyes that glittered with malice. "I don't believe we've met," Clara said carefully. "No, but I know your fiancé quite well." The woman's smile sharpened. "I'm Caroline Monroe. Nathaniel and I have history." Clara's blood went cold. Beside her, Nathaniel had gone rigid. "Caroline, what are you doing here?" "Eleanor invited me. She thought it would be interesting." Caroline's eyes swept over Clara dismissively. "Though I must say, I'm disappointed. After Eliza, I expected Nathaniel's taste to have improved. Not," she gestured vaguely, "whatever this is." "That's enough," Nathaniel said, his voice hard. "Is it? I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. You could have had anyone, Nathaniel. You could have had me. And instead, you chose this mouse of a woman who looks like she'd rather be anywhere else." Clara's hands trembled. Every insecurity she had ever felt came rushing back. Every whisper, every cruel comment, every time her father had looked through her like she wasn't there. She should respond, should defend herself, should prove she was stronger than Caroline's words, but her voice wouldn't come. "Clara." Margaret appeared at her side, seemingly from nowhere. "Introduce me to your new friend." "Margaret Whitmore." Caroline's eyes lit with interest. "The beautiful sister. I've heard so much about you." "Have you?" Margaret's voice was ice. "Then you should know that I don't tolerate people speaking ill of my family." "I wasn't speaking ill. I was merely—" "You were being cruel, and you were doing it deliberately, in front of everyone, to humiliate my sister on what should be one of the happiest days of her life." Margaret stepped forward, her beauty suddenly sharp as a blade. "Here's what I think, Miss Monroe. I think you wanted Nathaniel for yourself. I think he rejected you. And I think you've been carrying that rejection like poison ever since." Caroline's face went white. "How dare you?" "I dare because I've spent my entire life watching women like you. Beautiful women who use their beauty as a weapon, who tear down others to make themselves feel superior." Margaret's voice rose, ensuring the entire gathered crowd could hear. "My sister is worth 10 of you, 100 of you. And the fact that Nathaniel Cole saw that, when you couldn't, says everything about both of you." The gathering had gone silent. Every eye was fixed on the confrontation. Every ear strained to hear what would happen next. Caroline looked around wildly, searching for support that wasn't coming. Even her allies had stepped back, unwilling to associate themselves with such obvious defeat. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Yes, it is," Clara finally found her voice, quiet but steady. "Because I'm done letting people like you make me feel small. I spent 23 years invisible. 23 years believing I was worthless. And then I found someone who saw me, who loved me, who chose me." She stepped forward, meeting Caroline's eyes directly. "You can call me plain. You can call me ordinary. You can whisper about me in every drawing room in Virginia. But you cannot take away what I have. Because what I have isn't beauty, or charm, or any of the things you value. What I have is real. And real is stronger than anything you could ever offer." Caroline's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came. Mrs. Crawford stepped forward, her face carefully neutral, but her eyes gleaming. "Miss Monroe," she said coolly, "I believe your carriage is waiting." It was a dismissal. A public, humiliating dismissal from Virginia's most powerful woman. Caroline gathered the shreds of her dignity and fled. The moment she was gone, the gathering erupted. But this time, the whispers were different. "Did you see her face? The quiet one has teeth after all. Perhaps Cole made the right choice." Clara felt her knees threatening to buckle, felt the adrenaline crash hitting her all at once. Nathaniel's arm wrapped around her waist, holding her upright. "Breathe," he murmured. "Just breathe. You did it." "I did it," she repeated, not quite believing it. "You were magnificent." He pressed his lips to her temple. "I have never loved you more than I do in this moment." "I was terrified." "I know. That's what made it magnificent." Margaret appeared at Clara's other side, her face flushed with triumph. "I think," she said, "that Virginia society just learned an important lesson." "What lesson?" "That the invisible sister is done being invisible." Margaret squeezed Clara's hand. "And that the Whitmore women protect their own." The remainder of the gathering passed in a blur. Clara received congratulations that were, for the first time, genuinely warm. Women who had ignored her an hour ago now sought her conversation. Men who had dismissed her now looked at her with new eyes. It was strange, this visibility. Strange and wonderful and exhausting. By the time the carriage arrived to take them home, Clara could barely stand. Nathaniel helped her inside, settling her against his side, his arm warm around her shoulders. "Sleep," he said. "You've earned it." "I can't sleep. My mind won't stop racing." "What are you thinking about?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. "I'm thinking about how close I came to failing. If Margaret hadn't stepped in." "But she did." "But what if she hadn't? What if I'd frozen completely? What if Caroline had won?" Nathaniel shifted to face her, his expression serious. "Clara, listen to me. There will always be Caroline Monroes. There will always be people who want to tear you down, who can't stand to see you succeed, who think cruelty makes them powerful. You cannot control them. You can only control yourself." "And if I'm not strong enough?" "You are. You proved it tonight. But even if you weren't," he cupped her face in his hands, "strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up. And I will always, always be there to help you rise." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve you." "You deserve everything." He kissed her forehead. "And I intend to spend the rest of my life giving it to you." They sat in silence as the carriage rolled through the darkness. Clara thought about the evening, the whispers, the confrontation, the moment she had finally found her voice. She thought about 23 years of invisibility, 23 years of believing she was worthless. And she thought about how it had taken just one person who truly saw her, to change everything. "Nathaniel," she said quietly. "Yes?" "I want to get married soon. I don't want to wait for a long engagement. I don't want to give society time to change your mind. I want—" "Tomorrow," he said immediately. Clara blinked. "What?" "If I could marry you tomorrow, I would. I would marry you right now, in this carriage, if the law allowed it." His voice roughened with emotion. "I have waited 6 years to feel alive again. I will not wait one day longer than necessary to make you my wife." "But the planning, the preparations." "Hang the preparations. Hang society's expectations. Hang everything except what matters, which is you and me and the life we're going to build together." Clara stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely." He took her hands. "We'll need 2 weeks, at minimum, for the banns, for the legal requirements. But after that, Clara, will you marry me in 2 weeks?" Yes. The word came out before she could think. Yes, absolutely yes. Nathaniel's face split into a grin. Then we have planning to do. We have... Nathaniel, it's the middle of the night. I don't care. I'm too happy to sleep. He pulled her against him, laughing with pure joy. 2 weeks, Clara. In 2 weeks, you'll be my wife. Clara laughed with him, feeling lighter than she had ever felt in her life. 2 weeks. Everything she had ever wanted. Just 2 weeks away. The carriage rolled on through the darkness, carrying 2 people who had found each other against all odds, toward a future brighter than either of them had dared to dream. When they arrived home, Margaret was waiting on the porch. Even in the dim lamplight, Clara could see that her sister had been crying. Margaret? Clara rushed from the carriage. What's wrong? What happened? Father, Margaret's voice cracked. He collapsed an hour ago. The doctor is with him now. Clara's blood turned to ice. Is he alive? But his heart is weak. The doctor says... Margaret's composure shattered. He says Father might not have long. Clara pushed past her sister and ran into the house. She found her father in his study, lying on the sofa, his face gray and drawn. The doctor was packing his bag with the grim efficiency of a man. His voice was barely a whisper. My invisible daughter. Not so invisible anymore. Don't talk. Save your strength. Strength? He laughed weakly, the sound rattling in his chest. I have no strength left. I used it all, fighting the wrong battles. Father, I was wrong about you. His hand found hers, gripping with surprising force. Wrong about everything. I was so focused on what I might lose that I couldn't see what I already had. It doesn't matter now. It does, and that shame will follow me to my grave. I forgive you. Don't. Not yet. Not until I've earned it. He looked past Clara to the doorway, where Nathaniel and Margaret now stood. Mr. Cole, you'll take care of my daughter? With my life, sir. And Margaret. His voice broke on her name. My beautiful girl. I'm sorry I treated you like a prize to be won. I'm sorry I sent Samuel away. I'm sorry. Margaret rushed forward, falling to her knees beside Clara. Father, stop. You need to rest. I need to make things right. He gripped both his daughter's hands. Promise me something, both of you. Anything, Clara said. Live. Not for society, not for expectations, not for men who see your surfaces instead of your souls. Live for yourselves. Love who you love. Be who you are. His voice faded. That's all I ever should have wanted for you. We promise, Margaret whispered. Judge Whitmore nodded, some tension leaving his body. Good. That's good. His eyes began to close. Your mother would be proud. I only wish I had been proud sooner. His grip on their hands loosened. His breathing slowed. For one terrible moment, Clara thought he was gone. Then the doctor stepped forward, checking his pulse, and shook his head. He's sleeping. His heart is weak, but he's stable for now. Rest is the best medicine. Clara slumped with relief. Beside her, Margaret was sobbing quietly. Nathaniel crossed the room and helped both sisters to their feet. Come, he said gently. You need rest too. I can't leave him. The doctor will stay. There's nothing more you can do tonight. Clara looked at her father, this man who had failed her in so many ways, who was finally, at the edge of death, trying to make amends. She thought about forgiveness, about second chances, about the complicated, messy, imperfect nature of love. 2 weeks, she said to Nathaniel. We're still getting married in 2 weeks. Clara, he would want it. He would want to see it. And Her voice cracked. "I want him there. If he can make it, I want him to see me get married. I want him to see that his invisible daughter found someone who sees her." Nathaniel pulled her into his arms. "Then that's what we'll do," he murmured. "We'll give him something to fight for." Clara pressed her face against his chest and let herself weep. For her father, for herself. For all the years they had lost to blindness and fear and misunderstanding. But also for hope. Because even now, even with her father's life hanging by a thread, Clara could feel something shifting. Healing didn't happen all at once. It happened in moments, in confessions, in hands gripping tight and words spoken true. And maybe, just maybe, they still had time. The 2 weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of hope and terror. Judge Whitmore rallied, then faltered, then rallied again. The doctor came daily, his expression guarded, his words careful. Clara sat beside her father's bed every morning, reading to him from the books he had never known she loved, watching the surprise in his eyes give way to something that looked almost like wonder. "You've read all of Locke?" he asked one morning, his voice still weak but growing stronger. "3 times. I never knew. You never asked." He closed his eyes, and Clara thought he had drifted off to sleep. Then he spoke again. "Your mother read to me when we were courting. Philosophy, poetry, political theory. She had opinions about everything, and she wasn't afraid to share them." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I fell in love with her mind before I ever fell in love with her face." "I wish I remembered her better." "You don't need to remember her." He opened his eyes. "You are her. Everything she was, everything I loved about her, lives in you. And I was too blind, too lost in my own grief to see it." Clara took his hand. "Can you see it now?" "Yes." His voice cracked. "And I'm so sorry it took me so long." The wedding preparations continued despite her father's illness. Nathaniel insisted on handling everything, arriving daily with lists and questions and decisions that needed her input. The church was booked. The minister was secured. Invitations had gone out to half of Virginia society, most of whom accepted with barely concealed curiosity. "They're coming to see the spectacle," Clara said one evening, reviewing the guest list. "To watch the invisible sister marry above her station." "Let them come." Nathaniel took the list from her hands and set it aside. "Let them watch, and let them see that they were wrong about you, about us." "What if I disappoint them?" "You will." He smiled at her startled expression. "You'll disappoint everyone who came hoping to see you fail. And that, my love, will be the sweetest victory of all." 5 days before the wedding, Samuel Webb came to Clara with a request. She found him waiting in the parlor, his hat in his hands, his face earnest and nervous. "Miss Clara, I need your help." "With Margaret?" "With your father." He took a breath. "I want to ask for Margaret's hand properly. I know he's ill, and I know he already gave his reluctant blessing, but I want to do this right. I want him to see that I'm not the penniless dreamer he remembers. I want him to know that I can provide for Margaret, that I can give her a good life, even if it's not the life he imagined for her." Clara studied this man who had loved her sister for 4 years, who had waited and hoped and finally returned. "Why does his blessing matter so much to you?" "Because it matters to Margaret." Samuel's voice roughened. "She tries to hide it, but I can see. She wants her father to walk her down the aisle. She wants his approval, even if she'll never admit it. And if there's any chance at all, that I can give her that, I have to try." Clara thought of her own father, his failures, his confessions, the way he was trying, finally, to make amends. "Come with me," she said. She led Samuel to her father's room. Judge Whitmore was sitting up today, propped against pillows, looking more alert than he had in days. His eyes sharpened when he saw Samuel. "Webb!" "Sir." Samuel stepped forward, his shoulders straight despite his obvious fear. "I've come to speak with you about Margaret." "I assumed as much." The judge's voice was dry. "Say your piece." Samuel gathered himself. 4 years ago, you sent me away. You told me I wasn't good enough for your daughter, that I had nothing to offer her but poverty and struggle. I remember. You were right. Samuel's admission clearly surprised everyone in the room. I was young. I was idealistic. I had dreams but no plan for achieving them. I couldn't have given Margaret the life she deserved. Judge Whitmore's eyes narrowed. And now? Now I have a position at one of the finest schools in Ohio. I have a house, small but sound. I have savings, enough to weather hardship. And I have 4 years of experience proving to myself that I can build a life worth living. That's not wealth. No, sir, it's not. Samuel straightened further. But it's honest work. It's a future. And it's love. The kind of love that doesn't fade when circumstances change. I love your daughter. I have loved her every day since we met. And I will love her every day until I die. The room fell silent. Clara watched her father's face, searching for some sign of his thoughts. For a long moment, she saw nothing. Then Judge Whitmore spoke. I spent my whole life chasing security, land, money, position. I thought if I accumulated enough, I could protect my family from hardship. His voice wavered. I was wrong. Security isn't something you accumulate. It's something. Sir, I denied you my daughter because you had nothing. I was preparing to sell her to the highest bidder because I thought that was the only way to save us. His eyes glistened. And then Nathaniel Cole walked into my life and showed me that the invisible daughter I had dismissed for 23 years was worth more than all the beautiful daughters in Virginia. Clara's breath caught. I was a fool, her father continued. A blind, stubborn fool who couldn't see what was right in front of him. And now, he gestured weakly at his frail body. Now I'm running out of time to make things right. Father, Clara started. Let me finish. He looked at Samuel. You love Margaret? More than my own life. And you'll care for her? Even when it's hard? Even when she's difficult? Even when the romance fades and all that's left is the daily work of building a life together? Every single day. Judge Whitmore nodded slowly. Then you have my blessing. Truly, this time. Not because I'm desperate or because I have no other choice. Because I believe you mean what you say. Samuel's composure cracked. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Don't thank me. Prove me right. The judge's eyes found Clara's. And you, bring your sister here. I have something to say to her. Margaret came running when Clara called. She burst into their father's room, her face pale with worry, clearly expecting the worst. Father? What's wrong? Is it your heart? My heart is fine, stronger than it's been in weeks. He patted the bed beside him. Sit, Margaret. I need to tell you something. Margaret sat, her hands twisting in her lap. 4 years ago, their father began, I destroyed your happiness because I was afraid. Afraid of poverty, afraid of scandal, afraid of what society would say if my beautiful daughter married a penniless school teacher. Father, I was wrong. The words came out heavy with regret. I was wrong about Samuel. I was wrong about what matters. I was wrong about everything except how much I love you. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Samuel just asked for your hand, properly this time, and I gave him my blessing. He reached for her hand. I want you to marry him, Margaret. I want you to choose love over security, happiness over society's approval. I want you to have what I had with your mother, what I lost and have spent 15 years grieving." "Do you mean it?" "I mean it." His voice strengthened. "And if I'm strong enough, if God grants me that mercy, I want to walk you down the aisle, both of you, my invisible daughter and my beautiful one. I want to give you away to men who actually deserve you." Margaret broke. She fell into her father's arms, sobbing, and Clara watched them hold each other, watched 15 years of distance finally begin to close. Then Margaret reached for Clara, pulling her into the embrace. Three people who had failed each other in so many ways, finally finding their way back. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm. Clara woke before dawn, too nervous to sleep, too excited to stay in bed. She sat at her window and watched the sky lighten, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 23 years of invisibility. 23 years of believing she was worthless. And now, in a few hours, she would become Clara Cole, wife of a man who saw her, partner to someone who loved not just what she looked like, but who she was. Margaret appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day. "You're awake." "I couldn't sleep." "Neither could I." Margaret crossed to sit beside her. "Nervous?" "Terrified." "Good. That means it matters." Margaret took her hand. "Clara, I need to tell you something, before everything changes." "What is it?" "I spent our whole lives jealous of you." Clara stared at her sister. "Jealous? Of me?" "Of your freedom, your ability to think and read and be yourself without everyone watching your every move." Margaret's voice wavered. "I was always on display, always performing, always terrified of making a mistake. You got to be invisible, and I—" She laughed bitterly. "I would have given anything to disappear, just for one day." "I never knew." "How could you? I was too busy being the perfect daughter to tell you the truth." Margaret squeezed her hand. "But now we both get to be free. You're marrying a man who loves your mind. I'm marrying a man who loves my heart. And Father," she paused, "Father is finally seeing us, both of us, for the first time." Clara pulled her sister into a fierce embrace. "I love you, Margaret." "I love you too. I should have said it more. I should have said it every day." "You can start now." "I intend to." They held each other as the sun rose, two sisters who had finally found their way through the shadows. The church was full. Clara stood in the vestibule, her hand trembling on her father's arm, and listened to the murmur of voices beyond the closed doors. "They came," she whispered. Of course they came. Her father's voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. They came to see the invisible daughter marry the most eligible bachelor in Virginia. They came to witness the impossible. "What if I fail?" "You won't." "How do you know?" Her father turned to face her, his eyes bright with tears he refused to let fall. "Because I know you now, finally. After 23 years of blindness, I finally see my daughter, and she is magnificent." Clara's throat tightened. "Father." "I was wrong about you, wrong about everything, but I'm not wrong about this." He squeezed her hand. "You deserve this, Clara. You deserve love and happiness, and a man who sees your worth. And I am so proud, so incredibly proud, to be the one who walks you toward that future." The doors opened. Clara stepped forward into a sea of faces. She saw Mrs. Crawford in the front row, her expression unreadable. She saw Lady Ashby, still sour with disapproval. She saw Caroline Monroe, standing near the back, her face a mask of forced indifference. And then she saw Nathaniel, standing at the altar, his eyes fixed on her, his face transformed by love. Everything else disappeared. Clara walked toward him, her father's arms steady beneath her hand, and with every step, she felt another layer of invisibility fall away. By the time she reached the altar, she was no longer the forgotten daughter. She was Clara Whitmore, soon to be Clara Cole, and she had never felt more seen in her entire life. The ceremony passed in a blur of vows and rings and promises. Clara heard herself speak, heard Nathaniel's voice, strong and certain, heard the minister pronounce them man and wife. Then Nathaniel kissed her, and the church erupted. Not just applause, something more. A shift in the air, a change in the whispers. Clara pulled back and looked out at the congregation. She saw Mrs. Crawford nodding, a small smile playing at her lips. She saw women who had mocked her, now dabbing at their eyes. She saw society, cruel, judgmental society, finally accepting what they could no longer deny, that love was real, that Clara Whitmore deserved it, that the invisible daughter had stepped into the light. The reception was held at Nathaniel's estate. Clara moved through the crowd on her husband's arm, accepting congratulations that ranged from genuine to grudging. But she barely heard them. She was too aware of Nathaniel's warmth beside her, too overwhelmed by the reality of what had just happened. She was married. She was loved. She was seen. Mrs. Cole. Nathaniel's voice was low, intimate. How does it feel? Strange. Wonderful. Terrifying. Still terrifying? Always terrifying. She looked up at him. But the good kind now. The kind that means I have something to lose. You won't lose it. How can you be so sure? Because I waited 6 years to feel alive again. I'm not letting go now. He kissed her forehead. You're stuck with me, Clara Cole. Forever. Forever sounds perfect. Margaret found them near the garden, Samuel at her side, her face glowing with happiness. Father wants to speak, she said, to both of us, before he gets too tired. They found Judge Whitmore seated in a comfortable chair, looking exhausted but content. He had made it through the ceremony, had walked both his daughters down the aisle. Margaret and Samuel had married that morning in a small, private ceremony before Clara's grand wedding. 2 weddings in one day. 2 daughters choosing love. My girls, he said as they approached. My beautiful, brilliant girls. Clara knelt beside him, Margaret on the other side. Thank you, Father, Clara said, for walking me down the aisle, for seeing me, finally. Thank you for forgiving me, his voice cracked. I didn't deserve it. I don't deserve it still. Love isn't about deserving, Margaret said softly. It's about choosing. Every day. Over and over. Your mother used to say that. He smiled, tears tracking down his weathered cheeks. God, I miss her. But today I can almost feel her here, watching, proud of the women you've become despite my failures. Because of your failures, Clara corrected gently. We learned what not to do. We learned that invisibility isn't the same as worthlessness. We learned that beauty isn't the same as value. We learned to see ourselves, Margaret added, even when others couldn't. Judge Whitmore gripped both their hands. I don't know how much time I have left, he said. The doctor is hopeful, but... He shrugged. I'm not young, and my heart has been through too much. But whatever time I have, I want to spend it differently. I want to know you, both of you, the real you, not the daughters I thought I wanted. You'll have time, Clara said fiercely. You'll have years. Perhaps, or perhaps not. He squeezed her hand. But either way, I want you to know something. I want you to carry it with you, long after I'm gone. What? You were never invisible, Clara. You were light in a house full of shadows. You were truth in a world of performance. You were everything I should have celebrated and instead tried to hide. His voice strengthened with conviction. And you, Margaret, you were never just a pretty face. You were courage and grace and quiet strength, and I'm sorry I reduced you to your appearance. Father, let me finish. He looked between them. My greatest regret is not the debts or the failures or even your mother's death. My greatest regret is the years I wasted not seeing my daughters for who they really were. But my greatest joy, his voice broke, my greatest joy is seeing you now, happy, loved, free. Clara embraced him, Margaret joining moments later. Three people who had lost so much time, holding on to each other while they still could. The evening deepened around them, guests departing one by one, until only family remained. Nathaniel found Clara standing alone by the window, watching the stars emerge. Penny for your thoughts? I was thinking about invisibility. She turned to face him. About how I spent so many years believing I was worthless because no one could see me. And now? Now I understand that being seen by the wrong people doesn't matter. What matters is being seen by the right ones. She stepped into his arms. You saw me, Nathaniel. When I was hiding in your library, trying to disappear, you saw me anyway. I couldn't help it. He pulled her close. You were the most interesting person in the room. You still are. Even now that you're stuck with me forever? Especially now. He kissed her, slow and deep. Clara Cole, my wife, my partner,
My love. Nathaniel Cole, my husband, my home, my future.
They stood together, wrapped in each other, as the night settled around them. In the distance, Margaret's laughter mingled with Samuel's voice. In another room, Judge Whitmore was sleeping peacefully, his heart still beating, still fighting. And Clara Whitmore, Clara Cole now, was no longer invisible. She was seen. She was loved. She was home. The weeks that followed the wedding were the sweetest Clara had ever known. She woke each morning in Nathaniel's arms, still amazed that this was her life now. They argued about politics over breakfast. They read to each other in the library. They built a life, conversation by conversation, day by day. Her father grew stronger, surprising everyone, including himself. The doctor says it's unprecedented, Judge Whitmore told Clara one afternoon, 3 weeks after the wedding. Apparently, having something to live for makes a difference.
And what do you have to live for now?
Grandchildren? He smiled at her startled expression. I'm not getting any younger, Clara, and I have a lot of lost time to make up for. Father! What? I'm being practical. But his eyes were warm with humor. I want to see your children grow up. I want to tell them about their grandmother. I want to teach them that worth isn't measured in beauty or wealth or society's approval. What is it measured in? Love? He took her hand. Courage. The willingness to see and be seen. The strength to stand up when the world tells you to sit down. Clara squeezed his fingers. You really have changed. Near-death experiences tend to clarify things. He paused. I'm proud of you, Clara. Not because you married well. Not because you saved this family. But because you had the courage to be yourself, even when everyone, including me, told you that yourself wasn't good enough. I had help. You had Nathaniel, yes. But the courage was yours. The strength was yours. He just gave you permission to use them. Clara thought about that for a long moment. I used to think being seen was a gift someone else had to give me, she said slowly. But it's not, is it? It's a choice I make, every day, to stop hiding,
to stop shrinking, to take up space in the world.
Exactly. Her father's eyes glistened. Your mother understood that. She never hid, never apologized for her opinions or her intelligence. And when I met her, it was the most attractive thing I'd ever encountered.
I wish I had known her better.
You know her. He touched her cheek gently. You are her, Clara. The best parts of her live in you. Margaret and Samuel left for Ohio 2 weeks after the wedding. The goodbye was harder than Clara expected.
I'll write every week, Margaret promised, clutching Clara's hands. And you'll come visit, both of you. Samuel's school is lovely, and Ohio has its own strange charm. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too.
But, Margaret smiled through her tears, we'll never be invisible to each other again, no matter how many miles separate us.
Never, Clara agreed.
They embraced one last time, and then Margaret climbed into the carriage beside her husband, and Clara watched until they disappeared from view. She felt Nathaniel's arms wrap around her from behind. You all right?
Yes. Sad, but yes.
She leaned back against him.
We wasted so many years being strangers. I don't want to waste any more.
You won't. He kissed her temple. You'll write letters, visit, build a relationship that distance can't break.
You sound certain.
I am certain, because I know you, Clara Cole. Once you decide something matters, you fight for it. Clara turned in his arms to face him.
You matter, she said. This life we're building matters. Our family matters. And I will fight for all of it, every single day.
I know you will. He smiled, that real smile that still made her heart skip.
That's why I married you.
6 months later, Clara stood before the mirror in her chamber, her hands pressed against the slight curve of her belly. Are you sure? Nathaniel asked from behind her.
The doctor confirmed it this morning.
Clara turned to face him, unable to suppress her smile.
We're going to have a baby, Nathaniel, a child of our own.
His face transformed. Joy, wonder, fear, love. All of it flickering across his features in rapid succession. A baby, he repeated. A baby. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you, he murmured against her hair. I love you, I love you, I love you.
I love you too.
Clara laughed through her tears.
We made a person, Nathaniel. A whole new person who will be part of both of us.
A person who will never be invisible. His voice roughened. I swear to you, Clara, our child will be seen. Every day, every moment. They will never doubt their worth.
I know.
She pulled back to look at him.
Because they'll have you as a father, and they'll have me as a mother who knows exactly what it feels like to be overlooked, and who will never, ever let that happen to her child.
Our child, Nathaniel corrected.
Our child,
Clara agreed. They stood together, hands intertwined over the new life growing between them, and Clara felt the last traces of her old invisibility, finally, completely, dissolve. She had spent 23 years as a ghost in her own life. Now she was flesh and blood and love and hope and future. Now she was seen. The story of Clara Whitmore did not end with her wedding. It did not end with her father's recovery, or her sister's happiness, or the child growing in her womb. It continued, day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. She learned to speak without apologizing, to take up space without shrinking, to believe she deserved the love she had found. She learned that visibility wasn't about other people looking at her. It was about her looking at herself and liking what she saw. Years later,
When her daughter asked her how she had found such happiness, Clara would think about this moment, this quiet morning in her chamber, her husband's arms around her, her future spreading out before her like an endless horizon. And she would smile and say the truest thing she knew. I stopped waiting for someone to see me. I started seeing myself. And once I did that, once I believed I was worth seeing, the whole world changed. Because Clara Whitmore had never truly been invisible. She had simply been waiting for the courage to step into the light. And when she finally did, she discovered what had been true all along. She was enough. She had always been enough. And she would spend the rest of her life proving it. Not to the world, not to society, not to the voices that had told her she was worthless, but to herself.
Because that was the only audience that truly mattered. And Clara Cole, née Whitmore, once the invisible daughter of a blind father, was finally, completely, beautifully seen.